Good afternoon again. Happy Easter to you all. We are here again talking about the spiritual exercise of St. Ignatius, and we're kind of coming to an end of the retreat. It's kind of a joyous time and then sometimes a sad time. But we can talk about maybe how we can keep this going in our life on a daily basis. Today we're going to talk about really my favorite passage of the New Testament and probably the Bible in general. Mostly because it has such a huge impact on me and my vocation. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit. I know it's not supposed to be about me, but maybe you can get something out of it too. So today we're going to talk about John 21, verse 1 through 17. And then also you do contemplation on Matthew 28, 16 through 20. So this is really the great commission of Jesus in Matthew to go out and teach all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. As we come to the end of the retreat, this is kind of a good message to reflect on. What our role is as Christians, as Catholics, is to go out and spread that good news, right? That this is the last thing the Lord told us before the resurrection, before the ascension of Jesus. And so it's important to keep that in mind as we kind of continue on and kind of come to the end of this retreat, but kind of keep that spirit going to be those heralds of the good news of Jesus. So that's a great one to kind of end the day on if you have an hour to just reflect on it. Again, putting yourself in place, going through the exercises, asking Lord for the grace to receive what he wants to give, realizing where you are, who you are, what it feels like, smells like, tastes like, what you see and hear. And then reflecting on the conversation, on what's actually happening. And then reaping the fruit, having that colloquy afterwards, maybe even 2 or 3, depending on who you want to talk to. Maybe you want to have a colloquy with one of the apostles. Maybe it's Jesus himself. But receiving that fruit that the Lord wants to give you in that. But also one of the hours we want to take is this reading from John 21. And this is when Jesus appears to the apostles. They're fishing in Galilee, and they see Jesus on the shore, the charcoal fire. And John is the first to recognize him and says, "It's the Lord," right? And Peter jumps in and swims to the shore, and the rest of the disciples come afterwards. And Peter has this great conversation with Jesus. This triple affirmation of Christ, asking Peter, "Do you love me?" And really, a lot of scholars, theologians say that this is kind of Peter making up for that triple denial he had in the court of Caiaphas before the crucifixion, where Peter denied Jesus 3 times. That he's making up for this in this 3 tridentine triple affirmation of, "Yes, I love you, Lord." It's interesting. That's going to give you some background on maybe me, and this might kind of help you maybe in your discernment if you're discerning something, or maybe in a deeper reflection on what actually is happening. It may not be this reading, maybe any of these readings. It's important to kind of reflect on, okay, well, where am I now, and how is this particular passage, whether it's from John or some of the other passages we've covered in the past couple weeks, what is speaking to my heart? What is the Lord telling me in this passage? What does he want me to do in this passage? Going back a few years, when my late 20s, early 30s, early 30s, I just got back from my second retreat at the seminary, and I'm kneeling down before Mass on Sunday. It was during Easter, and I asked the Lord what he wanted me to do. It seemed like he was calling me to the priesthood, but my life at that time was comfortable. I didn't really have worries. I definitely wasn't coronavirus, but financially I was secure. I was pretty fulfilled in my job. I had a relationship that was going pretty well. And the Lord seemed to kind of blow all that up. And when it comes to anything that's in discernment, discernment isn't a choice like a moral choice between something good and bad. It's a choice between 2 goods. That when you discern, discernment means to cut away, You're cutting away these things in your life that are keeping you from hearing the Lord's voice. And in my discernment, it seemed like it was very ambiguous. I didn't know what the Lord wanted from me. So I knelt down for Mass, and it was Good Shepherd Sunday, which this reading from John happens on Good Shepherd Sunday. That's one of the readings. I think it's year C. So I happened to be year C that year. And I knelt down and I said, Lord, I don't know what you want from me. Just give me something. Give me a sign. And it was this gospel, John 21, that when Jesus was telling Peter, do you love me? He said, well, feed my sheep, tend my sheep, feed my lambs. And at that moment, I didn't hear Peter, do you love me? I heard Mark, do you love me? And the response was like, well, sure, of course, Lord, I love you. Why would I wouldn't be here if I didn't love you. And then it was very clear, well, tend my sheep, feed my sheep, tend my lambs. And at that moment, I felt at least that, well, I at least need to seek out this calling, and maybe not become a priest. That's a possibility, maybe not. But at least maybe look at the seminary and see if I'm called to at least go to the seminary. When I was young, discerning priesthood, as I think anyone discerns in their life, whether it be religious life, married life, priesthood, there's sometimes some fear that kind of grows in it. And I was always raised that whenever you sign yourself for something, you're obligated to do it. And so I kind of looked at as the seminary was that if I had to go to the seminary, well, I couldn't leave. That was it. Now I may be kicked out, possibly, but if I went to the seminary, that was all. I was going to have to become a priest, and it felt huge for a 17-year-old to make that call. I would imagine same kind of discernment if someone was thinking about getting married as a teenager. There's kind of an immensity to it that's scary, and I ran away from it. But this passage kind of at least opened my eyes to say, well, maybe I at least need to go see what the seminary is all about, see if I'm being called to this. It wasn't until I started studying Greek that when you reread this in the original Greek, you realize that Jesus and Peter are actually talking about two different types of love. The Greeks have several words for love: eros, agape, philos, as the Romans kind of had a few too. And in English, we just have love, right? That's it, But when you reread this in the original Greek, what you realize is that Jesus, he approaches Peter with Peter, agape su. Will you love me with a sacrificial love, laying down your life for me? And what's interesting is you think that Peter would be like, yeah, of course. I mean, I just betrayed you and now you're resurrected. You're obviously God. Yeah, no, of course I'll do that. But his response isn't agapo. I love you with that sacrificial love. It's philo, Lord. I'll love you as a brother or a friend. You kind of wonder, it's like, well, Peter, what are you? Well, I mean, it may be that same immensity that Peter was experiencing. It's like, well, wait, I love you, but I don't know if I can die for you, Lord. I can't do what you did, right? And so Jesus kind of says, well, okay, well, least you can do is tend to my sheep, right? Lead others to me. And then again, Jesus, okay, Peter, agape su. We love me the sacrificial love. But Peter again is like, well, Lord, look, that's very uncomfortable. Philo, I'll give you philo all day. And again, he says, well, okay, at least tend to my, feed my sheep. And what's interesting is the Lord condescends to Peter in the third time. He doesn't say agapo. He says, okay, Peter, fine. I understand where you're at. Phile. Will you love me as a brother and friend? And of course, Peter responds, yeah, that's what I'm doing. Sure, Lord, I can do that. No problem. Well, after verse 17, though, it goes into like, Lord tells Peter, well, yeah, okay, even though you're there right now, you're at this place of philo, which is great. You're going to eventually give me the agape. You're going to suffer and die for me. And he did. He was martyred in Rome. He was crucified upside down, thinking he wasn't worthy enough to die the way our Lord died. And then at the end of the gospel, that reading, John is kind of lingering in the background, and Peter recognizes John. Is like, hey, what about this guy? What am I supposed to do with him? And John was a beloved disciple, but Jesus' response to him is also like, what do you care? You're mine. You and I have a relationship, right? We talk about this love we have for each other. Why are you envious or jealous of him? We have a relationship that's unique for us. And so maybe it might be good to read all the way to the end of John 21 to reflect on that and contemplate that if you have the time. But there's such a depth there. Moving forward, just last year, all the deacons in St. Louis at Kendrick Lennon, we have a great privilege and honor and just charity to be able to go to the Holy Land as deacons to do our canonical retreat. I think now they have a class that's 3 weeks long, and it's actually, I'm almost kind of envious or jealous that I didn't get to do that. But it was a great experience to actually be there in the Holy Land where these things were happening. And it was interesting when as we're getting ready to go to the Holy Land, all the deacons had an opportunity to preach at some of these spots. We read about in the Gospels. And one of the places was Peter's Primacy, this place on the Sea of Galilee, where there's currently a church that was built there. There was an opportunity to preach, and being the senior member, the elder of my class, I figured I'll let the younger guys, take a spot. I'll just take whatever's left. And lo and behold, talk about God's providence. That spot was open. And so I got to preach at that spot as a deacon, getting ready to be ordained a priest. And it was amazing. It was amazing. You kind of see the God's hand, though, in reflection of all these things that happen in your life. That this reading first allowed me to enter the seminary, the depth of it, to kind of have that as as my mantra throughout the seminary, and then to be able to preach at that spot 2,000 years later, before I entered the priesthood. And it was so moving for me that I actually made it part of my ordination card. It's actually John 21, 15 through 17 is actually on my ordination card from last year. So so this is kind of give you some insight as far as maybe how a particular passage may affect you. It's being cognizant of that, open to that. That may not be John 21. It may be Matthew 28 or John 20 or Luke 24, the road to Emmaus. Whatever it may be, it's good to kind of reflect on your life and see where you're at. And as you grow, and as you grow deep in your faith, you kind of glean different things from these readings. And it may not be the same reading every time. It may be a different reading. So like today for Thursday, with the act of Easter, we have Luke 24. This is kind of after the road to Emmaus. The Lord appears to the disciples, and this is kind of again. It's during the day of the resurrection. It's that Sunday, and the Lord appears to the disciples in the locker room. So maybe you can reflect on that too. Maybe that's speaking to you as well. Maybe how the Lord is appearing to you in your life. Do you recognize Him when He does? Or have you recognized Him in the past where He's been working in your life? So it's good to reflect on these things to, again, reap the fruit that's coming from these contemplations, but also seeing how they have affected you in your life and how they are affecting you currently. And when I say affect, I mean affectionate, right? How that affection is being manifested in your life. So again, I hope you're all doing well. Tomorrow we'll kind of end. Maybe we'll do another discussion about the rules of discernment. We kind of briefly talked about that, but there's a lot of depth to those as well. Maybe we can do another session just on maybe a series of sessions just on those rules. Again, I hope you're doing well. Hope you're recognizing the Lord is working in your life, receiving the grace He wants to give you. Happy Easter again, and this octave, and may God bless you.